Hi, guys. Welcome to Once in a Wild, where every once in a while we have meaningful conversations with meaningful people. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. Today, we have an extremely special guest. I am so excited about this episode of Once in a Wild because it's about as real as it gets. We have a woman today, a good friend of mine named Mindy, and she's going to be sharing her story of how she fell into a situation where she experienced grooming, toxic relationship, domestic violence, abuse, narcissism, you name it. We share this story in order to educate others and in hopes that maybe by her sharing her story, we can prevent someone else from falling into the same situation and the same pain. Again, this is extremely brave of Mindy to share, so I congratulate her for having that courage. And I am honored to share space with her and to hold space for this story to be told. If you are someone that finds yourself in a similar situation, please visit the description box below where you can find links and resources to helpful support systems that can help get you out of your situation. Without further ado, let's hear from Mindy Meddock and her story of how she survived domestic abuse and toxic relationships. So, up until this point, you are in this relationship with someone who you have this huge age gap with. You've experienced all these grooming experiences, and we're at
Mhm.
a time now where he has now been violent with you, which I'd like you to unpack if you're willing to, and he's even been violent with your friend.
Yeah, correct. He's started being a lot more controlling, a lot more aggressive. A lot of it is, as in most like domestic abuse situations, is behind closed doors between me and himself. He would say things, he was emotionally abusive. He'd tear me down, but then it would turn around and he'd be building me back up
Mm,
afterwards. And it was just that cycle of love bombing, abuse, love bombing, abuse. And 19 years old or so is really when it started to be a huge part of our relationship. We fought often,
mm,
and it was so confusing, and the turmoil that you're put through emotionally and psychologically when somebody does that. It's psychological warfare, for lack of a
mm,
better term. He's the one person that I feel like I love him, but then he's also the one person that knows all those spots that are going to hurt the most, and
mm,
that's where he's going to hit. So he was very, very demeaning, and a lot of the time the violence happened in a sexual manner.
mm,
There were plenty of times where I just, I didn't want to.
mm,
And I specifically remember one time, just if I pretend to be asleep, like he's gonna stop, right? He's not gonna,
mm.
he's not getting anything from this. And it just was a cycle like
Didn't
that.
matter.
And I think alcohol had a lot to do with it. He would be a lot worse when he'd been drinking, but that was something that he did regularly. And by default, I ended up drinking a lot too during that time in
Mm,
my life. It's ironic because by the time I turned 21, spoiler alert, I'd gotten away from this by that point, and then I didn't really drink much. It was like a constant.
mm.
And I think that really played a huge part in his aggression. When he'd been drinking, I think it was a whole lot
Mm.
worse.
Yeah,
It's
real quick, did he come out with that abusive nature and that violent nature and that demeaning and the love bombing and abuse? Was that present right away or did that grow over time?
It grew over time, but not as slow of a burn as from meeting him to where when
Mm,
things escalated on an intimate level, it feels like it came out a lot faster. I think it was like I've almost like I've got you where I want you, and now I can just
right,
show my true
right.
colors. Like the mask is off at this point, kind of thing. And and he was right. I was, he had me hook, line, and sinker at that point. So I kind of felt like there was really no other option.
Mm,
That's just kind of where I was, and that mentally speaking.
mm. It sounds like you didn't believe in at that time that you had the agency to make another choice.
Correct.
Okay,
Because of the guilt, I think I had that idea of I did this to
right,
myself. Like I made my
right.
bed, now I have to lay in it kind of thing. And it just felt like the bad stuff is really just me getting what I deserve at
Mm,
this point. Because as our relationship continued and as the abuse continued and that mental mind game continued, my self-worth was just
Dwindling.
going spiraling, rock bottom, honestly. I just felt this is fine because it's what I deserve because I'm a terrible person and
Mm.
I fell for everything,
That's something
all
that
of
really struck me from your outline was a couple times you repeated that I had chosen this. I made these
Mhm.
choices to be in this relationship. I brought
Right.
this upon myself. Do you feel like the more detrimental factor was how much he cut you down to demean your self-worth down, or do you think it was more you beating yourself up for making those choices?
I think it was a little bit of both, and I didn't have to drink that whiskey. I didn't have to
Okay.
go upstairs, like, it was my fault, when in
Mm,
reality, the truth was that I was underage, and he knew it, and he gave me alcohol, and no, I didn't have to drink it, but in the
mm.
moment, like, he is just as culpable as anyone else
Right.
in this situation, but
Maybe a
I
bit
put all the
more,
blame
maybe
on
a little bit more
myself, maybe
culpable.
a bit more. He was the adult
Right.
and had been for longer than me, but just the knee-jerk reaction to put the blame on myself.
Right.
It's just that, "Oh, I did this to myself," is
Mm.
what it felt like, and
Because I feel
I
like
think
there's a
that
move in awareness there that I wanna zero in on. I feel like at
Mhm,
first you're describing a scenario where you didn't really know what was happening, you didn't recognize, and then I feel like there's this second awareness that suddenly you find yourself in where you're like, "I know that this is bad, and there are bad things happening,
mhm,
but I chose this myself." And I find that space in between
right.
very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of it does come from too, a kind of a coming of age type feeling where when I first met him and when our relationship on that level first started, I didn't know what was
Right.
going I didn't know any better. And then, I have this thing happen to me where it just like flipped it.
Right.
And it was like immediately into this space where I understood that what was going on wasn't right,
Mm,
and I think a lot of that came with the guilt that I was feeling, and
mm,
it was all there in my
mm.
face, and then the fact that he escalated from there rather
Okay.
quickly with his actions and his behavior. It was all laid out then at that
Mm.
point where it was like, "Oh, this isn't really a great situation," but then again, when you have these abusers and these narcissists like this, they turn it around on
Right.
you.
And you believe it.
One of the I believe it. And other victims and survivors, they can completely
Right.
agree, and I think a lot about have you ever watched the the body cam footage of Gabby Petito when
Mm,
they were pulled
yes.
over with her boyfriend?
Yes.
That when I first saw that,
Mm,
I was just
that was probably
sobbing
hard to watch.
because I was like, "That was
Wow.
me." I looked like the crazy one. I looked like the instigator,
Mm,
and he's just chill as a cucumber. Yeah, she gets like this sometimes.
to comment on that, when I first became witness to that story, I did
Mhm.
feel that narrative that you just described, that this was a calm the male
Yeah.
was a calm individual that was
Mhm.
helping this girl that was struggling with mental health issues and anxiety, and he was just
Right.
doing his best, and that they were having some disagreements. The more I
Mhm.
learned, and as I've learned as a person, because I remember when that story came out, by the time I got around to watching the documentary, like the same progression we're laying out here, I had
Right.
such a different experience viewing that. And you could see
Mhm.
all the little segmented steps that led up to that.
Right.
So I feel like
Yeah.
where someone comes in on someone's journey like yours,
Mhm.
the optics from the outside are so particular because unless you've come
Right.
along that journey to some degree, you have no idea what you're looking at.
Mhm.
Whether you are a parent or a friend or a law enforcement officer in that scenario, you
Right.
have no unless you are very trained to you're
Mhm.
witnessing, you will have no idea what's going
Exactly. And these people, these abusers, these perpetrators that, are that have their victims under their thumb, they're good at what they
right.
do.
Right.
It's a personality flaw, the
Maybe
narcissism,
disorder.
I don't know, the
Maybe
psychopath,
yeah.
yeah, disorder. It's a part of who they are and the way their minds work, and
Mhm.
they're very smart and they're very clever and they know what they're
Mm.
doing and they come out looking, I'm good. I'm the knight in shining armor and she's just a little
Or
off.
trolled,
She's
right.
crazy. Don't mind her. Yeah. And yeah, that body cam footage, it wrecked me when I
Wow.
first saw it because I was like, "That's it. That's
And you
exactly
had
what it
lived that
is."
play for play.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and there were situations where he would push me, and then I would finally snap,
Right.
and it's like when I did, it was just like I couldn't fully express what was going on because there were no
There's so
words
much
for it.
confusion
It
and
just yeah, yeah, and so then I come off looking like I'm just
then
bonkers, you
reactive
know?
abuse ensues. What a
Yeah,
wild system.
exactly. Unless someone's highly trained to recognize those type of things. When it comes down to the law enforcement officers, a lot of people wanna put the blame on
Mhm.
them in, like, that particular scenario, but there's not really training for that. There's not unless there was maybe a law enforcement officer who responded who had been through something like that
Right.
personally.
Particularly
You come into it in the middle of it in that moment in time, and it looks like exactly what the
right,
abuser has arranged,
right.
what he wants it to look like. Yeah,
And will the
it's
victim or the survivor, hopefully at that point, be able to answer those questions? Because, like, when we watched the
yeah,
Gabby Petito story, she was repeating
mhm,
and buying into the narrative that he was spinning because she was so
yeah.
trapped in that narrative that she
She's
believed
like,
it.
"It's me, I have anxiety, I'm causing the
And who's to
problem,"
know
and
whether she
it's
believed that narrative or someone like you believed that narrative at that time, or if they
mhm,
are protecting their partner that they still very much love
right.
and they don't want
Yeah,
legal involvement. On a personal level, for me, like I opened with when we first started talking, is that I personally have not ever had an experience as extreme as yours, but I've been adjacent to many of them. Members of my family, very
mhm,
close members of my family, and people in my life that I've been very close to have been serial victims of these types of
right.
predators and narcissists and abusive relationships. And just to give some context to people on the outside, typically the experience is someone's having a relationship, depending on what your relationship is to them, by the time something's going on, it is so
Mhm,
entrenched and so deep and so destructive and so dangerous.
right.
Most of the time,
Mhm,
one of my close family members that would do this on a successive basis, bless her heart, she's healthy and happy and married now, but by the time I would be brought in on the scenario, we were in trouble.
yeah,
We were
yeah,
homeless. We were
like, code
going to
red, it
jail.
was
People had been
yeah,
physically harmed.
mhm,
Lives were threatened. Things had been,
right,
and by the time you bring that person in, how did we get here?
yeah,
And that's
yeah, and a
that
lot of
outside experience.
it happens behind closed doors, like I
Right.
said, and these abusers will take their victims and take them away from family, away from friends. They're gonna create that space
Exactly.
because they know that somebody who loves
Right.
them is gonna say, "Hey, I don't think
Right.
he's good for you,"
From
and
living
all of that.
adjacent to that so many times over and over again, I know those red
Mhm.
flags from the outside. And
Yeah.
I can see
Yeah, you
so
can
many
spot
times of,
them.
"Hey, you're being isolated. Someone moved you away.
Mhm.
They don't want you, they're your best friend, they don't want you talking to your best friend." All these little
Right?
things that we can talk about and break down these signs and symptoms.
Mhm.
I can zero in on those now just because I've seen it happen, and there's something about it, like you pointed to, whatever this that's for some other therapist to work out why these predators are
Right.
doing this. There is something formulaic about it. There is a
Mhm.
formulaic breakdown that is enacted upon these victims that
Yeah.
it works. It works
It
really
does, it
well.
does. It is literal, like, psychological warfare.
Mhm.
It's like a trained,
Right.
planned out method,
Another
and
statistic I saw said that only 33% of women in these scenarios tell someone else.
that guilt, that shame, that gaslighting where you feel like it's my fault,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I don't wanna come out and be like, "Hey, I did this thing, and now I'm in this position,"
So it's a
and
mix of
it
not
really is.
knowing
It's
what
like
scenario you're in and
mhm.
that guilt and shame complex on top.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the perfect storm, and they mastermind the whole thing, and it's crazy.
So
I
at this
mean,
point, you knew you were in a bad situation.
I knew I was in a bad situation. It was one of those where I'm just gonna try to make the best of a bad situation. Like I did have feelings for
Of
him,
course.
and that's the thing that like you have to level with yourself. My feelings for him were real. They were legit. I was so entrenched and entangled with that relationship, that it wasn't a healthy love by any means. Since then, like, I've experienced a healthy love, and it's night and day.
Wow.
And but again, I was also very inexperienced. I didn't know, I didn't have a lot to compare it to. And actually, he was one of the people that I ended up going to Burning Man with.
Okay.
That was one of the things that he always talked
Nothing will
about, was like
cement a
Burning Man
toxic
this, Burning
relationship
Man
like a
that.
music festival.
I know,
It
going to
should be
Burning
studied.
Man, like, and surviving a dust storm together. Yeah, and that was one of those things where I feel like there were people there that saw the way we interacted, that knew something was up.
Really?
They knew something was wrong. And while we were there, he was very flirtatious with other women, but I couldn't, like, so much as compliment another man.
You
He was just very much, like, in his element, and he felt, like, safe and good, but, like, I think that the mask kinda came off there for him, and
mm,
people saw it. And I actually had someone, say another burner, is the way we'll say it, approach me at one point. He was like, "Are you good? Are
well,
you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Like, having the time of my life." And he
mm,
was like, "I don't know, man. Like, he's off running around with her and her, and are you okay?"
wow.
He was just literally on the outside looking in, and he's, seems off.
Oh,
And yeah, yeah. Even then, like, at that point, I was like, "No, it's fine. Everything's fine.
I
This is
bet you
normal
that was
for
an
us."
individual who had witnessed that dynamic elsewhere in their life.
Probably. Yeah, yeah, thinking back on it, that I'm sure, because,
Maybe with a sister or
some
mother or
yeah, like, somehow picked up on something. It was after Burning Man, and this was kind of the other pivotal point where I started actively trying to get away from the
okay.
situation. He and I had gotten into a fight, which wasn't abnormal. I wanna say I actually hit him
Oh,
at one
really?
point during this fight. Like, I was done, done. And
That's usually pretty pivotal if a woman is being
yeah,
physically
yeah, like,
violent
I
back.
stood up
Yeah.
and he left, like, on foot left. No idea where he went. I know he had at the time, he had friends from New York in town, and he had mentioned, "I'm just gonna go back to New York with them." I was like, "Cool, bye." And we get into this fight, he leaves. I was riled up, couldn't just go to bed, and I went out with a friend,
Mm,
had a couple drinks, we were playing pool, just blowing off steam, nothing wild. Didn't get rowdy, gone for a couple hours. I'd turned my phone off, I think, or on silent, or I was just like, "I'm not even gonna bother." I get into my car to come home, and I had over 30 missed calls from him.
wow.
Yeah, and I was like, "I don't even know what I'm gonna come home to."
So
And
fear, panic.
just yeah, just when messages where he's answer your phone and yelling and, "What are you doing?" And he's going off the rails. So I get home, my dog is gone, and I immediately know, I'm like,
Took the dog.
"He took my dog." And he told me he's going to New York, and these people were leaving, like, the next morning to go home.
And this was intentional,
And
him taking your
just
dog.
oh, man, just he knew that it would hit me where it hurt, because that dog was,
Right.
like, my foundation. Like,
Mm,
nothing else could be going right in the world, and I had Tucker. I call my mom.
mm,
That's, who you call. I call my mom first, and I say, "He took Tucker." I'm crying, and I'm, like, just all out of sorts. It's been an
right.
emotional evening altogether, and she goes, "Call the cops, I'm on my way."
Oh, mom knew what was up.
And mom knew what was up, and it is, like, 1 a.m. at this
That's right.
point. It is the middle of the night, and she is, like, "Putting pants on now. Just call the police, get them there, I'm coming." And love you, mom.
Yeah.
And she shows up, an officer shows up,
Mm,
takes a report, and he's, "Look, we don't have any proof he took your dog." And the officers take a report. They're like, "There's really other than that, like, unless you can prove that he took your dog, there's nothing we can do."
Wow.
And so they leave, and my mom goes, "Do you know where Indigo lives? Do you know where he went?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Let's
Let's
go get your
go.
dog back." Yeah, and mom's,
I
like,
love your
gearing
mom
up.
right now.
It's like right at dawn. And then, like, I am in, like I am just, like,
Distraught.
a mess. I'm distraught, like, it was the middle of the night. I'm knocking on the door, and I'm yelling for my dog, and I hear my dog bark, and your dogs bark. And I'm like, "That's all the proof I need, right?" So I had my card that the officer who had responded gave me, and I call him, I say, "Hey, I've got proof. We're
Here with
here.
my
My
dog.
dog is in this house." Yeah, we're here right now. And
Wow.
they show up, and he answers the door, and he's like, "What?" Rubbing his eyes. So I grab my dog and get my dog, distance myself from him. I didn't even wanna interact with him at all. And the officers say, "If you wanna press charges,
Mhm,
you can press charges. If not, like, we're filling out the rest of this report and we're done here," kinda thing.
mhm,
So, I did not press charges.
mm.
Looking back, I wish maybe I had, but I don't think it would have really made much of a difference. But I specifically remember saying, "I'm done.
Mm.
I'm done." And I remember he was so mad that I'd called the police. And he was like, "I came back and you were gone, and I didn't know if you were ever gonna come back. I thought you abandoned him."
Liar. Was
So,
he in
like,
the
'cause I'm
habit of doing things throughout the relationship to harm you in that way, whether it be destroying something, taking something, derailing something
mm,
in order to
mhm.
create chaos and fear within you?
Yeah, very much.
Pattern leading
I
up to the dog. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, just he was I think I had mentioned to you that he
Mhm.
had gotten into my journal, and I
Right.
had written a letter, and it was honestly, it was very close to a suicide
Okay.
note. I was at the lowest of my low, wrote a letter to somebody, just like
Mm.
laying it all out. I sealed it in an envelope. I addressed it, but I didn't send the letter. I put it in my journal,
Yeah.
closed it up, kept my journal tucked under my mattress, whatever I did, and it was just there.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just gotta get it
Yes.
out. And he had been going through my journal apparently, had found it, but he didn't want me to know that he had opened the letter, so I think he was trying to, like, boil a pot of water and steam it so
Oh,
that the sticky part would come loose so that he could read it without me knowing. Only it backfired on him, and he
which
somehow,
is
like,
deeply psychotic behavior.
deeply psychotic, started a small fire in my kitchen, and I woke up to smoke alarms going off
So
and
this
smell of
exposure to
burning
this type of
kitchen,
chaotic
like,
situation was a regular thing.
was just a normal thing, and, of course, that a fight ensued, obviously, and the thing was
Still
he
your fault
wasn't
somehow.
mad. It was my fault. He wasn't mad about the contents of the letter. He was like, "You addressed it, like, you were gonna send it. Like,
But
someone
not
else was
care and
gonna know
concern.
what was going on." Yeah, it wasn't, "Oh my gosh, you feel this way, we need to get,
Get you some
you
help,
help or
get you some
therapy
support,
or
right?
whatever." No, it was the fact that I had addressed it
Because it
and
had to
was
do with
going
his
to
image.
share that.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
for
the
sure.
tell
So
right
he was
there.
just it was just very, like you said, chaotic, and he was constantly putting me in these positions. I remember one time we were driving and he was drunk and
Mhm,
I'm underage. I am not of legal drinking age at any point in this
mm.
story. And we'd
Which
been
is
out at a
easy to
party.
forget while you're telling this,
It
your a
is, considering how much happened. But I was driving and we were fighting or like what caused it. He kept reaching over and grabbing my
classic.
steering wheel and pulling it. And I'd have to correct the car, and I was just, like, in a panic. I'm like, "Dude, stop.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna cause us to get into a wreck."
Mm.
And I don't understand, like, what the play was there, like, at
Fear.
the moment, looking back, just the
Right.
fear, the fact that, like, he still had the control over, like, how I felt. Yeah, I
Do you
don't
think it's
know.
possible as a person with whatever mental disorder he was dealing with that would cause him to behave in this way, do you think he took enjoyment in you experiencing fear and panic and chaos?
I think in a way he found enjoyment, out of it because it gave him a sense of control.
Okay.
I think that's what it was ultimately what it was about
Mm,
was control. And, and I can only speculate,
right.
but I feel like that it made him feel like in a position of power.
Mm,
He wanted to be in a position of power and control is what it felt like. And so I think that when he did these things, it fed into that
right.
where he's creating these
Right.
situations and putting me underneath him.
Right.
And that probably did made him feel pretty
In a
good.
lot
Probably
of
stroked his
situations
ego a
like
little
this,
bit.
I hear about abusers like this creating scenarios like this and then subsequently rescuing the victim from that
Mm,
scenario. Did you
mhm.
experience that as well?
There was a lot of, like I said, like before the love bombing cycle
Mhm.
where like after he took my dog,
Yeah.
he calls me crying and
Mm,
I thought you were abandoning him and I thought you were so mad and then I tried calling you and I couldn't get a hold of you. I thought something terrible happened to you and you were never coming back. Just oh. And I was like, "Mother trucker, I thought you took
mother
my dog and
trucker.
ran away to New York. I went out for a couple beers."
I think
Like,
there's so many
but
people that
it
can identify with so many experiences that you've laid out, and one of the things that came to mind when you were talking about your experience with your dog, which is so traumatic, is that in higher stakes situations or experiences that have expanded beyond this, I've seen a lot of cases where the abuser will exact that same type of situation using a child,
oh,
and
yeah.
they will take
Oh,
the
I am so grateful and forever will be that there was never a child
Mhm.
involved. I can't even imagine
Right,
because that's one of the things that, like, when someone's trying to leave their abuser,
right.
if there's a child involved, that's,
It
like,
changes everything.
reason number 1 where it's, I can't
Right.
in that
Abuse and
situation to the
fear and
abuser.
brainwashing that you've laid out increases by a magnitude of a million when you bring that
Mhm.
element in.
Oh, yeah, because it's just a pawn, and that's really what that was. It was like, "That's the last
That was the
straw,
moment
I
for you.
can't. I'm done." And but he weaseled his way back in, and it
Oh,
was
really?
just, "I'm sorry," and I was looking out for you, I was looking out for Tucker, I was doing this, doing that. I feel like there was some distance between us at that
Right.
point, but I was still linked to him.
Mm,
I was still in it, and that started the cycle of you said 7
right.
times. That's absolutely true. It is so hard to get away when it's I break free
Mm,
and then he comes back with all these I love you and I'm sorry. I'm going to quit
right.
drinking. We're going to be together. We're really
Projection.
good together.
Mm,
But yeah, we just had this idea of we're a power couple and like we can make this work. We just got to both commit to it
mm,
and I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to do better and when I'd be like, "All right, we'll give it another go."
mm.
And,
Do you feel like you were
it
experiencing
was
any of what they call the lost cause or lost time fallacy, where people believe they've put
um,
in XYZ number of years and they wanna see it through?
yeah,
Yeah.
it and it did, it kind of felt like, we'd been through all of this when he came at me saying, "I'll do better. I'll do this. I'll do that. I wanna build you up and not tear you down," and all the things that I wanted to hear, it was easy to take him back, and this was around the time where you could go to Speedway and buy a track phone.
Okay.
And get a new number, like, same day, like, within 15 minutes, have a new number, new phone.
But I'm sorry, I have to again, because I feel like this is another step in this engineered process because you've been through
Mhm.
all of this abuse and tearing down. So by the time you're ready to talk about, "Hey, I'm transitioning out of this," and starting that journey to getting out of that,
Right.
the hooks are actually deeper because
Yeah.
he's now offering up the things that you've begged for all this time that you're so
Mhm.
you he's created this void that wants those things so badly. So when he gives
Yeah.
those, even to the smallest degree or for a brief amount of time, They're
Mhm.
so potent and you're
It's
so
like piques
hungry
my
for them.
interest. Oh, I do want that. And it is. It's all part of a tactic. And I don't and it all seems so methodical, but like in what world there's no way that he could have woke up one day and be like, "What I'm gonna do today
Mm,
is befriend a 15-year-old
right.
and then 3 years from now." Like there's no
Right.
way that like it's a play by play, but it's so crazy that it's the
And
same
it's so
for
formulaic,
so
right.
many women. It's so formulaic, like you said, it's just the same process. Different
Mm.
scenarios, different words, different people, but
Which
it's
we'd need a whole
like,
other podcast to unpack why
oh,
that is,
yeah.
but there has to I when I see a system in process being used, it makes me point back to
Mhm.
a systemic issue. There's something systemic at
Yeah.
play that's being passed down
Mhm.
as a template that is somewhere inside. And we
Yeah,
would probably need to have a conversation with an advanced professional,
which I am not.
unpack why that is, but this
Yeah,
represents
no,
your
and it's
journey
kinda
out.
that makes it so hard to get away from it because you are in. They do have your hooks in you
Mhm.
and you're stuck, and I would go or I was saying, like, the burner phones, like, I would change my number. I changed my
Wow.
number probably 5
Wow.
times, and when either a friend would give them my number
Mm.
or I would cave and be like, "Hey, like, how's it going?" Because he was such a big part of my life for so long, and it and there was really no
Mm.
like, this was the last time, and I was finally free. It wasn't like a huge I remember talking to somebody, one of my friends, about possibly getting a restraining order, but I
Okay.
was like, "I don't even know how to do that."
Mm.
I was 20 years old. I was like, "Do I just go to the police department? Do I, like,
But you were
call the
flirting with
police?
that
Like, what do
idea.
I" Yeah, just I was like, "I just really want that connection to be totally and utterly severed."
Mm.
And I think that just in the, like, trial and error of separating and, like, getting back in contact, separating, I think each time there was more and more space put between us.
Mm.
And it got to a point where, honestly, what probably happened was he found someone else,
Okay.
and his attention was
Over
elsewhere
time.
because it was like it just tapered off and it was
Mm.
done, and but then I'm left with this big pile of garbage to carry and clean up, and I don't know what any of it is and how to deal with it because it all started when I was a child, a
Mm.
literal child.
Right.
So, like,
And
I
it
don't have
contains
anything to
so
go
much
off
of
of.
your personal history at
Yeah,
such a
yeah, it was
pivotal
who I
time,
was.
right?
So it was really hard to come out of that, and then the now what, and I didn't have the knowledge and the understanding and the awareness of what had happened.
Mm.
I didn't know that my brain chemistry
Right.
had been changed forever. I didn't know that I was totally altered, that I was suffering from
Right.
CPTSD. Had no didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Had no idea. And so I was just trying to make it, and I had a hard time with
Right.
relationships moving forward. I think it severely affected a lot of relationships. I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked
Mm.
like. A couple years later, he had sent me a message like via Facebook or something, and he was like, I wanted to let you know that I really thought about what happened in our relationship, and like I was an absolute monster to you,
Oh.
and I met somebody else and moved to California for a little while, and she was great. She was beautiful, and he like really talked her up, and I was like, yeah, okay. And he was like, I realized I went into the same patterns and I lost her, and it was just so heartbreaking. It was like the closest thing to an apology that like I was ever gonna get. But at this point, I was so far separated from it. I was like, "Yeah, you were a monster." I was like, "You ruined my life. You gave me this huge gaping wound that has taken years and years to
Mm.
heal, and I'm not even there yet.
Right.
I have barely scraped the surface of the healing."
Right.
And your actions and your behavior and the way that you treated me, it was monstrous.
Mm.
Like, and he ended up, it was like, I remember I sent it off and I still had that sinking feeling like, oh
Okay,
gosh,
so you
like
still
I'm gonna
experience
get it now,
fear and panic as a
Oh yeah.
remnant of the
Yeah.
relationship.
But I also knew that it needed to be
Right.
said and I wasn't afraid to say it.
Mm.
But there was still that underlying, he's not gonna like that, and I was right because he came back a couple of days later, and he was like, "In rereading our messages, I realized that we can no longer be civil
Of course.
together." I remember thinking specifically, "I need to be careful here with what I say,"
Mm.
and I was just very clear, "Yes, you treated me very poorly. Like,
You said
you
that.
caused a lot of problems, and you were a monster." And I think I even was like, I hope that in realizing that you can maybe work on yourself and change that so that
Mm.
nobody else has
Good
to
for you.
experience it.
Did
Me.
you was there something about saying that truth in those sentences that was healing and empowering for you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think that throughout the course of our relationship and the whole experience, like there were so few
Mm.
times that I actually felt brave enough to stand up to him
Mm.
and speak up for myself. And after we'd had that distance, and I also via messenger,
Right.
it's not a face to face. I
Right.
don't know if I could have said that to him face to
Right.
face, but it also helped bolster that courage a little bit too, where I was like, no, he needs to hear it.
Mm.
And he didn't like it. Not at all. So
Sorry
that's
about you.
fine.
I
I'll
just
be
find
all
it
right.
interesting that you came in at the time, going back to the beginning of our story, where there was a hierarchy because you were the young kid and he was the cool kid on campus. And that
Hmm.
hierarchy that should have gone away should have never existed to begin with, but should
No.
have gone
Okay.
away as someone else reaches that same age bracket,
Mhm.
never went away. That hierarchy that was
No.
established then, you're cool and
Hmm.
I'm not, or you're good and I'm not, or you're older and I'm not,
Yeah.
continued as a through element. And I think
Hmm.
that's very interesting because in hindsight, or maybe someone comes in the middle of that movie of your life, if you will, and they see a grown woman in relation to a grown man and go, where's this
Hmm.
hierarchy from? Why is this woman buying into this hierarchy structure? That was
Right.
born a long time ago.
It was
Yeah,
when I was much younger, and kids are so susceptible.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
I was a kid. I was
Mm,
a child, and it really did, and I think that, and because I was stuck in that hierarchy, like you
right.
say, coming out of it, it was like, now I have to completely relearn who I
Right.
am, like, not just as a person, but as an
Mm,
adult, as someone who was taking responsibility for myself, and that's
mm,
scary. And there's not, because I didn't fully understand what I went through, I didn't know to like look for resources for help. I didn't know to seek therapy, which I desperately needed at that time. And I didn't know. And
yeah.
that's something that, like I said, I ended up learning so much about my
Right.
experience through a
Yeah. Tell
podcast.
me about that
And
realization
yeah, it was probably like 2022-ish or so.
or
It
in the
wasn't
future.
terribly. I have a coworker who she's kindred spirit. She knows I'd been through some stuff and we chatted a little bit. And she was like, I listened to this podcast that I really think it's called Something Was Wrong.
Mm,
But it's just these people tell these stories about what
mm,
happened to them. And it's just
amazing.
mind
Right.
blowing. And so I start season 1, episode 1, and it follows the story of this girl named Sarah,
Mm,
and she was dating this guy who was, like, charming, handsome, said all the right things, did all the right things, parents liked him, like, everything was just, like, perfect, but then there were, like, these red flags that started popping up, and he just took control over her entire life and changed her
mm.
ideologies, changed who she was. I was so like, "This has to be the same
It
dude."
was a play by play for
Like,
you.
it was a play by play, and we've said it's just this form
Mm,
scenario, and I was like, it was the very first time that I had heard somebody else tell my story,
wow.
and I was like, just floored
Wow.
because I didn't know that what I had been through was something that other people had even
Mm.
experienced. Had no idea. I just thought it was like a one-off thing.
So many women in situations like yours that say, I didn't call it that in my mind or my inner world because I thought of that
Mhm.
archetype of the battered woman or
Right.
severe physical abuse.
Mhm.
And the tagline, the most dangerous tagline that I've heard from so many women when they're explaining, if they're brave enough to talk about their experiences, it's not like he hits me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's not, he
That's the
doesn't
thing, like,
me.
it's a mind game,
Mhm.
and that emotional abuse and that mental
Yeah,
abuse, that and studies have
right.
shown is just as damaging and detrimental as actual physical.
A profound number of people have claimed that the psychological abuse element of those
Mhm.
relationships is far more likely to lead to PTSD and CPTSD if some
Yeah.
versus someone who experiences physical abuse alone.
Right.
That if it's
Yeah.
just the emotional and psychological abuse by itself is far more damaging than someone who is physically abused.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do too with the way that we treat victims and
Mm,
survivors as far as you can put a Band-Aid on a cut, but like the mental side of it, first you have to seek it out and
find
pinpoint
it, name it.
exactly where it is in your psyche that's causing the PTSD or causing you to have
Mm,
XYZ reaction. And then you have to treat that.
right.
And I think that mental health is really we're so far
I know.
behind. And when it comes down to actual treating mental health
Right.
issues and yeah, identifying and diagnosing. And so when it comes down to a domestic abuse survivor who has that PTSD caused by mental abuse and emotional abuse, we don't know where to start.
Right.
Like I said, when I came out of it, I didn't know where to start
Right.
until I found this podcast, and then I had words for what I
Mm.
was
You were given
experienced
a
or what I had
vocabulary.
experienced, what I was yeah, and the idea of fight or flight, being in survival mode. Like, I realized then that I had been operating in survival mode ever since
Wow. And the
someone
information that the
hey,
abuser puts into you becomes your inner voice
yeah. Oh,
throughout your
yeah.
life.
Mhm. It does. It really does. And that's I started when I came to Jerry and I was like, I feel like at this point, now is when I need to go to therapy
Right.
because I really understand that this is something that when you're sick, you go to the doctor. You know, you have a cough, you go to the doctor. When you have trauma, you should go to therapy.
Do you feel like when you heard that podcast, did you also start telling your story to other people? Or had you not begun doing that yet?
I really hadn't yet.
Mm,
People knew that I went through an abusive relationship. They did not know all the nitty-gritty, and it was something but it did empower me to think, "Maybe I should tell people." And that's why I'm here right now today
right.
because if I had not heard that podcast, how
Right.
long would I have gone not knowing?
Mm,
What I went through has words. There are studies, there is help, there are resources.
mm,
I had no idea, none at all.
well,
And it really just it took off from there because I started with The Body Keeps the Score.
right.
That was the very first book I read where I was like, "Oh my gosh,"
Can you
knowing
tell everyone a little bit about how was the remnants from that abusive scenario showing up for you in life? How was that showing up in your body? How was that showing up in your nervous system? How was that showing up in your relationships?
it made it really hard to fully trust someone.
Mm,
It was just like always waiting for the other foot to drop and just, yeah, things are good now, but at some point he's going to turn into
okay.
a problem. It was like, yeah, things are good now, but if I say the wrong thing or if I do the wrong thing or if I don't act a certain way or I'm not who he wants me to be, there's going to be
Mm,
problems. And so it was just like always trying to fit a mold and an anticipation of, you know, something happening where it turns into an argument, it turns aggressive, or it turns into a fight. And So there was like I said, I was always in that fight or flight type of mentality where just on edge, like ready to go one way or the
Wow.
other. And it wasn't until I was in a spot where I was able to slow down
Mm,
that I started realizing that I needed a lot more work than I had put in already. And that's where therapy came
mhm,
in and just kind of piece by piece and really understand this is the why. This is why I do this is why I'm nervous. I have the anxiety around relationships or and a lot of it did show up physically as well
mm.
too. Stomach problems for
Yeah,
days.
very common, very
It's very
common.
much, yeah. Yeah, super
Trauma
common.
and gut
And
issues.
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember my
So,
therapist telling me, and I was just so shocked. I felt betrayed because I had already been in therapy many years and explaining to her, I feel like things are getting worse. And as I uncover these things, I find this. And she said, you're safe enough to experience your trauma now.
mhm,
And trauma will not reveal itself in your body or in your brain or as a symptom until you've created enough safety
right.
for it to come out. So it was like this
Yeah.
beautiful yet tragic thing that my brain and my body had created this wonderful
Mhm.
wall to keep me from experiencing the
Yeah, yeah.
depth. But then
Mhm.
also, as I brought that wall down, oh, guess what's behind the wall? Then you get to think that
Mhm.
women like your experience or my experiences or other women I know are standing in this generational gap from where it was never spoken of. And hopefully, the
Right.
generations beyond us, it will be spoken of so much that these
Mhm.
situations will be prevented. But the people in the
Yeah.
gap are people like you that are saying, here's the difference between a life before there was no vocabulary. Like you opened with, you
No,
said, I didn't
none.
know what gaslighting was. I didn't know these were
Nope.
the only examples I had. I didn't know what love bombing was. I didn't know what narcissists look like and walk and talk.
Yeah.
If you don't have that vocabulary, then you're not going to see it coming.
No, you're not gonna recognize it when I think that's really a lot of why I feel like it's very
Mm,
important that people do talk about it. Like, it
right.
sucks. It's scary. What if people don't believe me?
Mm.
What if they're like, "Oh, she's making that up
That's a
for,
victim or survivor's worst
whatever."
nightmare is that they will
It
not be believed.
Yeah, and that's such a huge problem when it comes to domestic violence is in domestic violence, the victim is questioned harder than the perpetrator
Mm,
is in like almost every scenario. What did you do? It's the what were they wearing theology. Like
mhm,
it's
yeah.
you might have done this to deserve it
Why
or
do you
not
think that
so many
society
words,
does
but
that?
I think it's just the patriarchal type of society that we live in.
Mm,
And I think that growing up in the religious sect where I'm not sure if you're familiar with, like, Goddard's what's his name? Something Goddard. He had the homeschool
mhm.
thing.
I
Man was
was
nuts. It was
raised with
called
all those people.
it
Yes.
okay. So, he has this I don't know if he was technically a pastor, I guess, I don't know, but big religious guy, and he had this, like, model of God. It's like the umbrella
Yep.
model. So, like, God is here, the husband is underneath
Mhm,
God, the wife is underneath the husband, and the children are underneath the
mhm.
wife. So
And you
there's this
don't break that
huge
framework.
distance. You don't break it. No. And that is
You don't
like
question it.
written in stone. Don't question it. If it comes from the husband, it must have come from
Right.
God.
So
Always.
dangerous.
It's so dangerous. And I think that even if you're not, even if you weren't raised in like a religious type of environment or that's not really part of your ideology, because it is a part of so many other people's as a
Mhm.
society, we still have that
Right.
hierarchy where the man's up here, the woman's down here.
That's
How long
just
ago
core
was it
patriarchal
that
model and
I
hierarchy.
think that's what it really does play into, especially and I know that there are men that go through
Right.
domestic abuse as well, but when it comes down to women specifically, I think that's a huge
Mm,
roadblock that we've got to tear down
right. And I
somehow.
really think the mechanism of
And
tearing it down is discussing it,
oh yeah, yeah, I think so too. Awareness and education.
dismantling those patriarchal problems. And I think definitely a lot of that starts in childhood. And
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
we can't get there until we first start believing victims. believing survivors,
Mhm.
taking that seriously, that
Yeah,
there are consequences for these types of behaviors, that there's preventative
right.
education for women that's focused on women and victims and survivors. And I think after
Mhm.
we accomplish that as a society, we can look to, or maybe at the same time, we can look to what is happening with these abusers and how
Yeah.
can it be prevented? What healing or correction or re-education in corporate
Mhm.
speak can be
Yeah,
done to keep someone from implementing these types of abuses.
yeah. And like we said, like, a lot of it is so generational too,
Absolutely.
where we're distancing ourselves from that. We have more people speaking out and starting with the Me Too
Right.
movement, and I think that if we can put it in the forefront like that and just come
Mhm.
out with it, be like, "Look, I went through this. This is
It's
a
happening.
thing."
Right.
And I think that by being an example and showing you can talk about it, and it's scary, it's nerve-wracking, but I think that's what needs to
Mm.
happen is we have to break down that barrier of being afraid to talk about it and be more accepting and be more believing. And instead of seeing it in a light of what could you have done differently or you shouldn't have done
Mm.
that. Well, like that's why that happened because you did this and flip it to you're looking at the perpetrator. Why did they
Mm.
do that?
Right.
Why they shouldn't have done this. And I think that spotlight,
Is on the
like the
wrong party.
interrogation light is on the wrong
Absolutely.
party.
I do have some follow-up questions for you, but I did wanna say I've had a lot of adjacent experiences that have been really extreme, helping women out of abusive scenarios like you described. If you are at the point that you're like, "I gotta go. I gotta get out of here," but your lives are entrenched, your
Mhm.
finances are entrenched, maybe you have children, you're cohabitating,
Right.
friend groups, all these things. I wanted to touch on the mechanisms of escape real quick. You talked about using burner phones.
Right.
Me personally, when I have victims approach me, will say, "Here's a checklist of what you need to do right now. Here's the organizations you need to get
Yeah.
in touch with. Here's where you need to put the here's where you need to hide this." And there's a trajectory I can take them through. For you having experienced it
Mhm.
firsthand, speak on items like the burner phone real quick and how that was helpful to you in getting out, and what could women do or implement in their lives to start to extricate themselves once they've already made the decision, because nothing can happen until they've made the decision, "I am done."
Right. Yeah. And I think there's a gap between I am
Mm,
done and being able to like actually get that
right,
separation from their abuser. And I think one of the most important thing that women need to understand is that time when you are trying to leave, especially the time when you've made it out, is one of the most
right.
dangerous times for
That's
women
when
leaving an
most
abusive
violence
relationship
occurs.
because they don't want to let you
Right.
go. And unfortunately, a lot of women end up losing
Right.
their lives in that time frame because they cannot let you go. They cannot let you
Mhm.
escape. But having documentation is so
Okay.
important. I, at another point in my life, tried to get a restraining order and I thought I had ample
Mm,
documentation. I had screenshots of someone saying, I'm going to find you and I'm going to get
right.
you. To me,
I
that's a
think most
threat.
people
Like,
do not know that's
it
not enough.
right. Dates, times. And what's so hard is that if you want to document everything and have this case file against your abuser to where when it's finally presented, I need a restraining order, where are you going to keep it
I
where they're
know.
not going to find it? And so having somebody that you trust, and then again, back to secrets, if you have the secret, this guilt, the shame, it's so hard to come out
Especially if
with.
you're isolated.
You've Yeah, but you've gotta find someone on the outside that you trust and they keep it
Right.
for you. You feed the information to them,
Right.
they keep everything.
Because
Have
if
a
it's
go
found, it
bag.
could cost your life.
And it's so hard, especially when you're financially dependent on that
Mhm.
person. If you don't have your own bank account, you don't share a bank account with them, you can get your own bank account. You can get a Venmo debit
Right.
card now. Having your own source of income, your own source of funds, you may not be able to get a job, but you're also going to need that. And you have to be willing to open up and be honest with that person, whoever they
Mm,
are. There's also resources, the domestic violence hotline
mhm.
and such, which I'm sure you can link in the notes and stuff. where a lot of these pages where they have a quick
Right.
exit button,
Yes.
where if you're on the actual web page, whether on your phone, on your computer, like, you
Right.
can just, boom, shut it down.
Or I've known a lot of women who will look up these types of resources at a library where it's not in their phone's
Mhm.
history or their laptop's history,
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you've got somebody who's,
or
like,
borrow
looking into
someone
your
else's
things, going
phones.
through your browser history, and I think there's also a big disparity within law enforcement
Absolutely.
when it comes down to domestic violence and the response to
Mhm.
that, and I think that it all starts with
Mhm.
believing, and the legal
Right.
system is set up just backwards, and because it happens, that makes it another reason
Right.
why women don't wanna report the abuse, why they don't wanna move forward with
Mm.
trying to leave, because they know that it's gonna be his word
Mm.
against mine, and it's unfortunate that it's set up that way, and I think that, again, we're back to that
Right.
patriarchal ideology that society has, and considering the amount of women that are affected by it
Mhm.
every day, we need to get further from
Mm.
that ideology and further from where we are as a society in our response to
Mm.
domestic abuse before there can be change that's
Right.
actually
And
gonna
make a
stick.
difference in women's lives.
Yeah. I think about the people
Mm.
that I
Yeah.
was close to during that time, and like I said, the one friend
Yeah.
that was very adamant where she's, "No, this dude is bad news, and I don't like him, and he's not good for you." How
Good.
she stuck by me, like,
Good.
the whole time, and she distanced herself because obviously she didn't wanna be around him, but was very much just, "I love you,
Oh,
and you're
that's
my friend, and
amazing.
I'm never gonna give up on you, but
It's
this dude
awful.
is
Right.
no good."
One thing I found in my personal recovery and being adjacent to these relationships is that there are a staggering amount of similarities between the behavior of addicts and the behavior of the victims in these relationships. No bleep, Sherlock.
Yeah.
It's all born out of trauma. So obviously it
Mhm.
walks and talks very similarly,
Yeah,
but there's a very similar
yeah.
relationship. And I do want to have compassion for that breaking point, just like when you are dealing with someone who is an addict who keeps returning to
Mhm.
a negative situation, a damaging situation. It's really difficult on the
Mhm.
outside to know when to push, when to step back, when to come alongside, when to step in, when to step out. And the
Yeah,
ultimate
yeah.
thing that is the same between those 2 that I'm trying to say is that until that person is ready to leave, make them leave. If it takes that person 7 times to
Exactly.
make attempts to leave, you are not gonna make
Mhm.
them go faster. But that also doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Nope. It doesn't mean just, "Wow,
Right.
didn't work this time, didn't stick," and that's really a good comparison, having
It's
addicts
very
in my
similar.
life and within my family having to deal with addiction, and it really is. You wanna be there and help
Mhm.
them, but you don't wanna cross the line into, like, am I
Enabling the
just, like, a part
situation.
of the
Right.
problem at this point? Am I enabling them?
Mhm. Very
Yeah,
difficult.
yeah. So, that's a great comparison because it's very much and that there's a lot of mental there's a huge
Mhm.
mental part of it, and
Literally.
they're literally addicted to this person and the feeling and the situation that they're in is that's all they know. And it's this huge like highs and lows, peaks and valleys of terrible experiences, but then you're so
You're
low that
so
when you get
hungry
that love
for it,
bombing, it is
right.
like shoo straight to the top, dopamine
The
dump.
highs and
Like
lows. Yep.
it feels so good. And that's just yeah. And that's gotta be just
Mm.
so similar, such a parallel to addiction.
And chaos addiction is very real.
Mhm.
And however it got there, that can repeat itself.
Yeah.
Thank goodness you had the wherewithal to be like, "I would like to heal from this, please," because I think some people don't.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it does come
Yeah.
from that, like the polyvagal theory and your vagus nerve, and that it's part of your nervous system that really controls are we safe? Are we in danger? Are we shutting down? And when you've been at
For so
that
long.
fight or
Yeah.
flight survival mode for so long, when you get to the green light part of a space where you're somewhere safe, it's
Mhm.
almost like you
Right.
do. You have to like go back. You have to create the chaos or you have to find some way to because you're dysregulated
Mhm.
because you've been living in this feeling for so long, taking the time to really slow down and reset my nervous system. And it can look like meditating, it can look like yoga, it can look like just hyper fixating on a
Mhm.
craft, or art, music. I can pick up my
Mm.
guitar and 3 hours can go by
Right.
and I'm like, "Poof, what happened?" Because you just lose yourself in it. And it is like working towards that reset. It's pressing that reset button on your vagus nerve, and that fight or response quiets down because you've
Mm.
moved back into the safe zone.
That's the work,
And
that's
it's
the
like
healing work.
it's
Mm.
yeah, and it takes work. It's actual work. It's not something that's gonna happen
Right.
overnight. And like you said, I'm continually learning more. I'm continually working on it because I
Mm.
know that there's still more work
Yeah.
to be done. One step forward, two steps back sometimes to get to where I am today, to be in a spot where I feel comfortable sharing it and feel like I wanna help. I think all about education and awareness. I think that's gonna make the biggest difference, and as more women see the examples of women coming forward and
Me too.
being like, "Oh, I experienced something like that too. Yeah, that me too." It's going to help
Mm.
women not be so afraid to report it. It's going to help build that community and that shelter.
I wanna invite 2 different people into this conversation. The first person I wanna invite in is younger you. If you sat younger you down here with us right now, with everything we just
Mhm.
discussed and everything you just laid out and all your clarity and the work that you've done, so much work that you've done to heal from this and to name this and to share your story, what message would you have for Mindy who was in that worst moment?
I think it would really be that it's not your fault. You
Mm,
made the
love that.
decisions that you made with the knowledge that you had at that time, and you didn't do anything wrong. You shouldn't feel guilt for mistakes because they're mistakes. You learn from them, and I made plenty of them when I was younger, and I was making choices that I shouldn't have made. But at the time, and knowing what I know now, I was making the
Mhm.
choices with the mindset I had then, the mindset of a child, and not having the knowledge that I have now.
The other person I would invite in is the future
Yeah.
girl who may find herself in this scenarios, or maybe she hasn't been educated about this. What is the advice? What is the soundbite? What is your advice to a woman maybe who is in that scenario or has not yet entered that scenario? What are you going to tell them to look out for? What's your advice for the person who is primed and may find themselves falling into that situation?
I think the
Mm.
biggest and most important advice that I could give to somebody like that is trust your gut. Your body literally responds back to the vagus nerve. Your body is responding to outside forces. And if
Mm.
you're with somebody and something feels off, you're probably right. It's
Mm.
probably off. There's probably something wrong. It's that trust your gut and know that you're not alone,
Mm.
that somebody is going to believe you, but you have to tell somebody first in order to be believed.
Absolutely
Believed.
amazing. Let's
Um,
hope that
I'm so glad you
YouTube
have this
allows us to
platform that
say
you've created
everything
and
we
that you're
have to
doing
say.
this. Yeah. That was just what we shared. What I shared was just the tip of the iceberg. There's really
Absolutely.
so much more that, yeah, and it goes deep into the essence of my being because it's such a huge part of who I am. But it's not something that I have to carry with me in a negative way. I can turn it into something good and hope, that my story
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
my sharing it will help
yeah,
somebody else understand what they're
absolutely.
going through.
Yeah. Thank you so much.